it starts so young. Like I just had a woman today, 27, PCOS, fibroid, all these things. And she's 27 and I have a 27-year-old. I think we have to educate our youth. It's not just when you're ready to have a baby, right?
Here with my colleague, fellow acupuncturist, Denise Wiesner. Hey, Denise.
Hi,
Thank you for coming in.
Dr. Danica, yes.
I'm so happy. This is going to be a fun conversation because we both have some really interesting karma, don't we? Like your book, Conceiving with Love. So you took the bold path of helping fertility patients talk about keeping sex alive after multiple traumas, right? And then my book, Stick It To Me, Baby, sounds like it would be a book about sex. And instead, it's all these inspirational stories of transformation and transcendence. But both of us chose these paths that are important, but really hard to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So you asked me before we started rolling the cameras what made me decide to do this now, because here we are taking a really challenging conversation, the medical condition of subfertility and fertility, and this title, The Baby Makers, implies that it worked, right? Well, that is the mission of this, to bring the collective community here on the local level to talk about what is actually moving the needle, pun intended, for us, and turning the fertility patients into parents or baby makers. So come backwards in March, I had the opportunity to do this when my cameraman became available, and I just had enough guests lined up, and everybody was saying yes, they wanted to come on and try to help this crowd.
That's great.
So thank you for being one of them.
Yeah.
So Denise, let's talk about courage and what we bring to it. I know enough about your personal story, having lost your husband, but before that, you were already practicing some fertility acupuncture, right?
Yeah.
So could you set the stage on your role as a baby maker in this town?
I wanted to get into fertility because I saw so many people struggling, and I always was interested in women's health. So lo and behold, I started having fertility stuff and went to my fellow acupuncturists and naturopaths and doctors, and everybody just wasn't helping, it seemed. And no one was really merging the two, Western and Eastern. It felt like I would get like, we have to deal with your allergies. And I was like, but I just want a baby.
What year was that?
That was, oh gosh, my kid was conceived in 1996. It was my second kid. So between 1997 and like 2002, when my other son was born, I just wanted to have a second kid. And it was just fraught with so many kind of problems. And I had a lot of undiagnosed things that happened between my first kid and the second kid, like autoimmune conditions and so forth. And no one was like pegging those. And just everywhere I went, I wasn't really getting good care. So I think it spurred me on to really try to do the marriage between Eastern and Western and go down that road.
So do you think that if you look back at that point in time, here you have a toddler, were you overworking or depleting the essence somehow from the acupuncturist's point of view? And did your acupuncturist weigh in? And I mean, they're your colleagues and friends. So were they giving you good advice? What was going on?
You know, it's funny. My mentor when I was in acupuncture school was became my acupuncturist. She was an old Chinese lady in my building. And for some reason, she didn't really diagnose me. Really what was going on is I had a thyroid condition because I had a kid and nobody diagnosed this. And I did eventually, was like, I went to my gynecologist with like this pregnancy and was like, take my blood, check my thyroid. And it was off, but no one had figured that out, even though I had all the symptomology. And of course, when it's you, as a person who's like the healer, you don't really pay attention, or you just need extra people. So was I depleting my essence, having a toddler and working? I'm sure, right? It's a lot. Yeah. But I think more importantly, that change happened when I gave birth, as things happen. And changes your constitution. And perhaps there was many factors that I'll never know. But yeah, so I didn't get good advice from anyone, actually. I didn't get treated well at all.
Neither did I. Yeah, I was told in the acupuncture community that because of my sawtooth BBT chart, that if I was lucky enough to get pregnant, that for sure I would have a miscarriage.
Wow.
And then the medical community was telling me that because my FSH was high, that I would not be able to conceive, that I was going to be fast tracking to menopause.
Wow. Yeah. So I didn't get good advice. It was really me. It was like, wow, this is not good advice from Eastern or Western. And they're both not looking at the whole picture. They're like, the Eastern people were like, you need to work on your lung. You're having allergies and asthma. You need to get that under control. And it was like, but wait. I want a baby.
Right. Well, we both know that it's true that the lungs are important in fertility.
Yes.
But at the time, you weren't able to hear them say that. You had the emotions and you wanted that completion feeling maybe of 2 kids.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted a second kid because I'm an only child, but it was definitely, and I did a basal body temperature chart too. And I was like, enough of this. It was awful. So much stress. Like it wasn't for me.
I'm going to interrupt. What do you think of some of those tracking apps that are out there? If the charting was stressful, now all of the notifications in our phone about our temperatures and everything, I feel like it's even worse now.
I think it's so individual. Like, I think some people really get power and comfort in knowing what's going on. My PCOS patients that are using like the myriad tracker love it and think it's fabulous. And it's calming because they see what's going on. For others, it's very stressful doing this ovulation stick where they can't figure out whether they've ovulated or not, even though they're getting regular cycles. I mean, I just find that it's very individual for me.
Yeah. I always love talking to you because your perspective is going to be very wise. And at the same time, it's because you learned how to think for yourself, or you saw that thinking for yourself changed your path.
Yeah, I mean, I think knowledge is power, right? And also, this is what I do, and there's a calling, right? This is just, I felt like I was just called to do it. It just landed on my, like, here it is. You're going to do fertility, and more so, not just fertility, women's health. Yeah, not just fertility, really. And I'm starting to see it starts so young. Like, I just had a woman today, 27, PCOS, fibroid, all these things. And she's 27 and I have a 27-year-old. And I was like, wow, you're 27. Like, when did I get older? It's just so bizarre, right? But I think it starts really young. Like, I think we have to educate our youth. It's not just like when you're ready to have a baby, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I created the SEED program, to provide fertility education and to teach the women the 4 phases so that they would understand, oh, when I'm bleeding, I'm emptying out. And when I'm like 7 days later, my estrogen comes back online and I'm feeling more confident. And then after I ovulate and I see that egg white mucus and my temperature changes, then I'm in a whole other phase of the cycle where I'm going to be feeling like vulnerable. And then that last week of my cycle where the hormones are fluctuating and my blood sugar is out of balance, then I need to emphasize ways to balance myself out. So I saw that lack in fertility education, and that's why I put that whole system together.
So wise.
Thanks. I wanted to just jump in with respect to your courage in creating Conceiving with Love, because you really took control of that. It was such a good match with your personality. You're funny and wise, and you have Chinese medicine, and you put people at ease with, it's true.
Turn red.
Well, it's true. You do put them at ease because you're very human and relatable, and your story. And we have that in common. But to know that by the time they are seeing us, they're really not having sex for baby making anymore. So for you to bring back lovemaking and to write this amazing book about it. Can you tell me about the process for you?
For writing the book, it just... more and more patients that I have, and it spans the globe. Like, if I ask them about sex, and I am super comfortable talking about sex, I have to say, but they just like there's all sorts of issues that they start telling me that they never told anyone. And it's just started coming out. And I thought, gosh, is anyone talking about this? Like, is anyone talking about it takes sex to make a baby? And some people are doing IVF because they can't have sex, or a man can't ejaculate in a woman, or it's become really unfun. I end up talking about it all the time. And I thought, I need to write something that addresses this. I should have did Stick It To Me. That's so much better.
Well, they're
I know
very
it's taken
different.
already.
They're very different. Conceiving with Love is putting back in what's missing.
Right. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
But I should have called it Stick It To Me. Maybe people would have gotten. Should have titled it differently.
Yeah. Well, it's too late now.
Yeah. Too late, baby.
But the way that you reframe intimacy, starting with the anatomy, helping the women to talk correctly about their parts.
Yeah.
What made you jump in there? Because obviously you saw a missing piece.
Well, I mean, people don't know what to call themselves. They don't really know what's going on down there. I think I didn't look at my vulva and vagina, two different things, till I was in my 40s. Like I was like, oh, shoot, I should look. What is this? Like, where is my urethra compared to my vagina hole? And why is it called this? And then I felt like women needed to know, because we're not taught that in school. Like my kids' sex education was try not to get an STI, try not to get a sexually transmitted infection, and don't become an adolescent parent. And he threw the brochures on the table, and I was like, oh, that's really good sex education, Ethan. And so, yeah, I felt like there was a need to educate around sexuality as a beautiful thing and not a thing, to be hidden, and also our anatomy.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like Erica Chidi with body literacy and us bringing this conversation out and making it less taboo. Right.
Calling the correct things.
Because it is really interesting. We've been in this field. You're probably, for me, I'm almost 25 years in. You're a little bit more than that. But combined, that's a lot of years. That's a lot of needles and conversations.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this one patient who came in and told me that she had been putting her progesterone suppository into her pee hole.
Yeah.
Now, I think,
ouch.
Ouch. And so I asked her 5 different ways. Are you sure that it was that hole? And so this hole, like, are you sure that's where you put it? Did it not hurt? Do you have any UTI now? Like, anyway, there are these voids, and yet we have patients here in Los Angeles that are essentially reproductive endocrinologists, sort of, with the amount of knowledge that they have to find out in order to mix their medications and dose themselves properly and do the injections and all of that. So the control is there. And then it becomes more about the head, like up in their head.
Right.
But what do we say in Chinese medicine? The uterus is the second heart and the vagina is the second brain. So did you bring that into the book to be talking about we have the anatomy, but then did you talk about feelings? And
I mean, I talked about the elements, and I talked about the 8 extra channels and about the heart-uterus connection, because that's so important, right? It's the Chong, the extra vessel, and their connection into conception. So that, the heart opens to the uterus and vice versa. There is a connection, and keeping that open, because for so many people it's very shut down. So I did talk about that. Yeah.
I think of it as like flying up into the intellect instead of rooting down into the vulva.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I mean, people, oftentimes cut out. It's just the same thing with like love making, right? Or if you're like, okay, we have to like make this baby right now. We have like 5 minutes, and no, this all has to happen. People don't enjoy it because they're like in their head, and that's not what it's all about. Sensation and being in your body and not being in your brain. That's one of the beautiful things about it. Like, I guess with an orgasm, I think your brain actually, critical thinking just shuts offline for that brief moment for men and women.
Yeah.
So how wonderful to like not think for a moment.
Pause button.
Yeah, more orgasms. So it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
And when you're mixing and worrying and in your head, and and it's not enjoyable. And
right. When we're stressed out and overthinking and worrying, there's too much adrenaline and cortisol, which then dries secretions and tightens things.
Yeah.
That isn't really fun.
Yeah, no. I just had a couple that came to me, and I treat the woman and the husband and wife, and which I love doing. That's my favorite.
Fertility?
Fertility, yeah. She's like PCOS, but he had his sperm tested and it was subpar, so he went to a reproductive urologist, and he's all worried. And I ended up talking about sex with him because, truthfully, it's not good and it's not happening. Only happens when they're trying to conceive, and that's been miserable. And it was like, oh wow, we get to unpack stuff here.
So are you talking to him separately and her in another room?
I didn't know any of this was going on because she didn't tell me. Actually, he told me.
Oh, well, like he came for his own appointment.
Yeah, he came for his own appointment on a different day, and I thought, wow, that's really awesome. And when I work with couples, I do get that shared consent to be able to bring them together, even if it's in different appointments, right? So I thought, wow, that's so interesting. And that she's not enjoying it, he's not enjoying it. And the baby doesn't fix that. Like if you have a baby, it sets the stage for this to go downhill, right? If it's not enjoyable now, when you're running around chasing an infant or a toddler or whatever you're doing, it's hard, right? So,
So how did he share this as a problem for us? Did you ask him and he gave information, or did he volunteer, hey, do you think you could fix, or was it like an erection problem?
I think I asked.
Okay.
I think I just flat out asked, how is it going? And he was very comfortable talking about it. So he did, which was really great. And I feel so blessed that men are comfortable talking to me about sex, because not everyone is comfortable talking about it. But, and sometimes I'll usually in that dialogue, I'll be the one to initiate what normally happen, what I see happening. So people sort of feel like they're not alone, because it happens so often that I talk about other cases, and then of course they go, yeah, me too. That happens to me, right? Just we kind of normalize what happens in trying.
Yeah, I think what is most often happening is there's a book written by a husband called How to Make Love to a Plastic Cup.
Oh, how interesting. Wow. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's just a little paperback book. And the story that sticks out the most in my mind is where he says, I love In-N-Out Burger and I love my wife. And I would love to have In-N-Out Burger as much as I can. But if you tell me that I have to have it every day for 3 days straight or 5 days straight or whatever, I don't want it. It's oppositional defiance.
Right.
At that point, it's telling me that I need to do something or I should makes me dig my heels in and not feel good about it. It's not something that he's offering at that point. Then he's being coerced.
Right. When that begs the question, which is what I just did with my couples, of are you having intercourse or lovemaking or any sexual content away from baby making? And no, the answer was no. We're just doing it to make a baby during this time. That's oh, well, then it just becomes a job that we're failing at. And then it just sets the stage for bad. So it's really the ongoing, not having to, but if you're having it regularly, if you have intimacy regularly, and regular is different for everyone, then you're going to hit that window most likely, right? So it's trying to get into the regular rhythm so it's not this window where we have to and we don't have it any other time,
I do know. Yeah, one possible title for this episode is Denise Making the Bedroom Safe Again.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple who they had been trying for 3 years. They had 3 losses. They had also done 3 IVF attempts that didn't pan out. And then by some interesting luck, they ended up at a different doctor's office, and it was determined that she had a uterine septum. So they removed the septum, and I said, gosh, guys, because he was coming in as well. It was great. When they actually both show up, it is wonderful. I said, we should talk about this. You do have a fertile, receptive womb, technically, at this point. But the uterus being the second heart, I don't know how guarded and for the husband, after those 3 miscarriages and watching how badly it affected her, and I think 2 or 3 of them were from intercourse. So it puts him, as you know, in the position where they try, and if it works, then it's becomes so stressful. And if they try and it doesn't work, then it becomes even more stressful. So it's just not fun. It's no longer safe. So I said, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to try naturally for a couple of months, or are you going to go straight to in vitro? And or try IUI? And they said, straight to in vitro. We're done with all of this. We want our lives back.
Yeah. And, for some people, that's the right answer. I mean, I have no judgment on doing IVF or insemination or anything. Like I try to listen to my patients of what they need. And for some people, it really is what needs to be done. And that's okay too. Yeah. And I've had those patients too, where like things aren't diagnosed and people go through so much trauma, and then something gets diagnosed that should have been diagnosed a long time ago. It's really, I've had a lot of those too. Yeah.
Right. I had a vulvodynia case on one of the earlier episodes, and everybody was telling her that it was a yeast infection, but all of her cultures were negative for yeast. It was endometriosis causing pelvic floor tightening, and she went through with the surgery, but then had 2 miscarriages due to a thyroid problem.
Wow. That's both you and I see these very heartbreaking cases.
This is what it means to be on the last resort, holistic part of the equation or part of the team, right? Because we take the time, we listen, we help them put their heart back together. Yeah. You're even wearing a heart necklace right now.
My heart necklace. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Sometimes it's like about showing or holding the space for other options, which might be a doctor change or looking at this, or I don't know. Sometimes it's just it's taking the time to actually listen and hear what each individual or couple needs. It's different for everyone.
Yeah. And then as they're talking to us, they hear themselves talk, or they ask us what we think. And of course, we can't really say too much, but we could say, well, what I did, or what I might do if I was in that predicament, because by the time they have got us on the case, their stories have become really complicated. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think people who want to have a baby, especially older women, right? Or even younger, but older women, actually, it's across the board.
Right now, the younger ones are coming in and they're complicated.
They're freaked out. Yeah. But they're really like my young ones that are trying, that are in their 20s. I have 20-year-olds that are trying. And the sperm and the husband and the wife and freaked out. So anxious that like she missed an ovulation. So the doctor scanned her and said, oh, you're not ovulating. Did a progesterone. You didn't ovulate. Yeah, she had a really late cycle. She ovulated late. She was so anxious. That one cycle, stress.
Yeah, the hypothalamic.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, you are ovulating. You get regular periods all the time. One-off. It was a one-off. Trying to just calm the system down a lot, because there's such a buzz on for infertility. There's a lot of issues women are having, and all of that. Yeah.
Social media showing how scary it is, or making it look more scary and treacherous.
And egg freezing. I have so many women like, should I egg freeze? Should I not? I'm 40. I don't know. I mean, it's, wow, so much is going on.
And then what I love is how now more than ever before, we are integrated in with the team, and the doctors are seeing our value on the team. Yeah. And we help them so much to sort through the emotions, which then makes the medications and the cycles come out better. And the patients feel better from having some place that's safe, that they can come in and like talk it out, and then get their endorphins and much needed rest, maybe some suggestions.
So much so. I totally agree.
I've sat in on some of your classes, right? And you are really in the traditional Chinese medicine pharmacopoeia, prescribing traditional and classics. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with the herbs, particularly for fertility and women's health?
Yes, I can talk about that. It's always evolving. I just finished a year-long program. I did like the Sharon Weizenbaum classic Chinese medicine herbs. It was really interesting, looking at the herbs, how they use them classically for all the infertility and stuff. So I have a a classic pharmacy powdered herb pharmacy in my office. And a lot of times I'll mix herbs per patient. And it's kind of, again, what a patient will do, right? So it's like, I make suggestions. Some people won't take powders. They'll want capsules. I might use something else. I try to practice really individual medicine because I feel like it's assessing where someone's at, right? And it's the best medicine. I had a patient once that had actually she had 2 uteruses, and she got pregnant. She had a baby. She did all my stuff. She was great. And then she wanted to have a second kid, and she got pregnant, and it like 6 months found out that it wasn't okay. The baby had some genetic thing they didn't recognize that she's a carrier of, and so is her daughter that she had. And it was this big thing, and they had to terminate the pregnancy. And then afterwards, there was so much heartbreak that she wanted to do IVF to weed out the genetic disorder. And the doctor gave her this huge list of what she should take. And she took everything on it. And what ended up happening is her estrogen levels plummeted. They were terrible. It was like her body was like, no, too much here. And I said, stop everything. Don't take anything. And everything came back up. And so it's
I've seen that too.
You've seen that too, where it's like inundated by like, you're just taking so much stuff. It's the system is like, no thanks. So I feel like there's a sweet spot of herbs, nutritional supplements, and it's very individual. Some people want to take more. Some people don't take it, even if you give it to them. So it's like juggling what it is. But I do love to do herbs. I think herbs are magical and amazing.
We have that in common.
Yeah.
I like to sprinkle in herbs that address the emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally. Well,
they really work.
They're so amazing.
Yeah. Especially,
amazing.
I had a class here for menopause, and Dr. Hu, Jiling Hu, was there, and we were talking about Chinese medicine for menopause, and seeing the medical, when the repercussions of using the patches, the estrogen patches, and taking progesterone pills, and the excess weight gain that comes from that, to be able to keep things plump and juicy, but then it keeps everything plump. But then Dr. Hu said, and she was wearing a flattering dress, and she was like, I take the Chinese herbs so you can see I have no problem with my weight.
I love it.
And it was just really interesting what this medicine can do. But when we get a patient, like you said, herbs aren't right for everybody. But when they do work, they really make a difference.
I think they're amazing. And to the point of menopause, like I just listened to a podcast about estrogen, and it was frightening.
How so?
Frightening. It was just touting, like as if estrogen was like I felt like we went backwards. Like estrogen was the panacea for everything.
I am worried about us overprescribing, or not us, but because it's all over Instagram. We can easily
oh my God,
treat
your
menopause.
brain, and you will be like you'll be demented with no bone mass if you don't take this. I mean, it was really like, I thought, oh shoot, I should maybe reevaluate and take estrogen. I've never taken it, but I'm not anti-estrogen or anti-hormones for a certain person but sometimes not everyone needs them. And my mom's 91. She never took bioidentical hormones. Her brain's amazing. It's not, it's like we're missing the mark when we have reductionistic medicine where we just put it like to one thing, right? It's everything. You have to,
it's holistic.
It's holistic. You have to look at everything. That's why the herbs sort of address the overall person to balance, not just like giving estrogen. Again, not anti-estrogen, but you know what I mean?
I do. We could say unmatched estrogen, or too much synthetic medicine. Too much synthetic estrogen. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all.
It isn't, yeah.
And the same for fertility. We have come a long way watching these different protocols. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting to be in this perspective or in this seat at this time after seeing so many things like the day 3 fresh 8-cell embryos, and they're putting in.
They used to take out a cell, remember?
Yeah. Right. But to put like 8 of those in, I've watched them do wild stuff like that. And I had a patient who conceived quadruplets. And
wow.
and so all the different conversations that we've sat in with our patients,
Yeah,
right? Like
many.
to help them decide if they're going to reduce.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's been many triplets and
Mm-hmm.
a couple of quad cases. So watching the medicine change to evolve to be now we're testing and freezing
Mm-hmm.
everything, which for us with a Chinese medicine perspective lens, it looks like, oh gosh, we're going from that extreme of not testing anything over here to over testing and screening. Mm-hmm. And I think one of our many hats we wear is to help them to figure out what is the right thing to do.
It's always a good question. What is the right thing to do? Absolutely. Yeah.
And what's right now? What's my best choice right now with the information that I have?
Yeah. Things change all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they've changed a lot in this field.
It's true.
So I was wondering, this is kind of some acupuncture questions.
Yes.
If you happen to have a favorite formula for fertility,
or
something
like
that
herbal?
You use a lot. Yeah.
Herbal formula.
Let's compare notes on some fertility.
I've like changed because I told you I just did this classic Chinese medicine. So now I'm starting to like incorporate a little bit of that.
More like kidney yang tonics?
Yeah, more like sort of like Dangui Xiaoyao San, Wenjing Tong. I've been sort of like playing around with those. I add and subtract. I mean, yeah. So, but those are like my new kind of friends that I seem to be using a little more these days.
Me too. But we both learned them at the same time. So I'm kind of thinking, I mean, we were exposed to these formulas way back when, but I think that now they're more relevant and probably because we're in this post-pandemic era where there's fewer egg counts or fewer normal embryos or more miscarriages happening, various different problems happening, irregular cycles, bringing the hypothalamus and the cycles to be back online with some kind of regular frequency, that now Wenjing Tong sounds like the right formulation.
You know, I never thought about that.
Wouldn't have been before.
Yeah, I feel like I did a lot more like kidney tonics, a little bit more kidney, and I don't feel like I'm doing as much kidney tonics. I feel like I'm really addressing massive amounts of like stagnation.
Blood stasis,
and
right?
blood stasis, a lot of blood stasis and stagnation. More so, it's like almost like opening up, and people are so anxious and cold hands and cold feet for anxiety. I'm just seeing a lot like different, maybe post-pandemic and blood stasis from
exposure to the virus and creating the antibodies and the stickier blood.
Yeah, I think it has affected my practice and like using more. Yeah, I really do. Yeah.
The last class that I taught at the acupuncture school was called silent blood stasis because, you know, we learned that blood stasis is excruciating fixed pain, right?
Yeah.
But blood stasis in the micro circulation around the ovaries and around the testicle and in the uterine lining, those little blood vessels could be clogged with a clot that's the size of a grain of sand. And then that's going to create a blockage of oxygen to those egg cells or sperm cells. So for us to be bringing in more of the blood moving herbs.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting from the Chinese medicine as everything goes in layers and stages. And here we are seeing that we need more of those hard-hitting, blood-moving.
That's so true. Very much a lot more blood stasis and more stagnation, more stasis, less on the kidney depleted.
More inflammation and heat, right? I'm even using a little bit fewer emotional resolving herbs and just being more in these heat resolving and circulation moving. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of patients with red hands. Have you been seeing those fertility patients coming in with red hands, really cold feet?
Cold feet. Usually, I just had someone today. It was like ice cold feet.
But this is new for us. That's why I'm bringing it up. Yeah.
I don't know if I've been seeing red hands. I see lots of cold hands, cold feet, more so than before, I think. Yeah. But hot with cold hands and cold feet.
red face, the stomach channels. We're getting a lot of red face.
Lots of rosacea. Interesting. I'm seeing a lot of like hormonal rosacea.
Which has got to point to a liver scenario, right? Like,
yeah, it's heat, but I mean, it's sort of like that sort of like
flaring up
of heat. It's not being rooted in the core where it needs to be. It's coming up. Yeah.
I'm also seeing a lot more dilated pupils. Have you been noticing that?
I don't know if I've been noticing dilated pupils, but
now that I've said it,
I will.
It's starting to calm down, but I had another one yesterday. And, you know, the pupils relate to the kidney and the adrenals. And I do think that for 2 years plus to be wearing masks and to have a threat to survival on such a major level that impacts our careers and our relationships and our economics, everything. That is a lot, but I'm seeing it more in younger women,
people.
I'm
seeing a lot more. Was it like this? Did young people have so much PCOS and endometriosis? I'm like floored how many young people have it. Well, I'm just wondering if they had it and they were just suppressed with birth control, or it's just more now.
And all of the sugary caffeinated drinks.
Right. Yeah.
That they're hooked on.
Or it's really like, I wonder if it's like the mothers, like me, you know, and in the womb where it all gets created and how that affected the today's young youth.
Probably the combination, right? It's undifferentiated embryological tissue from the mothers and then the inflammation from the diet. So like Chinese medicine again, with what you're born into and then what you are exposed to.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine is really fascinating, isn't it?
I think Chinese medicine is amazing. And I tend to always keep going back to my roots, but I have a lot of patients that see like naturopaths and they're given like a massive amounts of things. And then I like almost too much. Right. And then I'm always fascinated by what a Chinese, like if we just did one formula to clear it, how that would help.
Yeah. Like we can take care of the emotions, the irregular cycle, the bloating, and the headaches.
Yeah. You're taking so much stuff. Yeah. Or you're doing thousands of tests that are off the beaten path that maybe not in all cases, but sometimes don't need to be tested because it's actually something else. That's what I see a lot of. So they're always on so many things.
Yeah. What are you doing with your patients when they are not having regular cycles?
That's a big question.
It is a big question, isn't it? Because
it depends on why they're not having regular cycles. Is it PCOS?
Let's say it's not PCOS.
Like hypothalamic amenorrhea kind of thing, or they're just like...
Yes, hypothalamic amenorrhea, meaning they are really stressed out, but they don't think that they're stressed out.
I mean, I feel like just, you know, I really honestly... most of my patients that like I've had patients that haven't gotten a cycle for a year and a half that end up getting pregnant. I think it's just like settling the system down, and sometimes they need IVF, right? It just depends, but getting everything balanced. So it's, you know, the same things you probably do, like talking about their lifestyle, exercise, diet, supplements, herbs, and creating some connection, blood flow from this, you know?
Right. From the head down, right?
Yeah.
Getting them in their body.
Yeah.
Right.
Eating well. I mean, it's looking at medications, looking at what they're taking, you know, drugs, recreational drugs. I mean, there's so much, right? ADHD drugs. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now Ozempic.
Oh yeah. That's a whole thing.
I know.
You can't be doing Ozempic and do fertility though.
I agree. I think it's too extreme and too untested. Like we don't know the long-term ramifications.
Well, you can see like the patients that are on Ozempic. I have a few, and you know that do qualify for it, like, but they're doing well. But as soon as like I had one person that couldn't get it for a while and went off it, and he just gained all this weight back.
Really?
And I don't think it's a lasting. You have to be on Ozempic for like you can't go off of it. So that's a hard one, right?
Right. Well, remember the whole conversation is that if we don't address what caused the weight gain in the first place.
Yeah. It's a hard one. I mean, yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Inflammation, emotional eating. I've talked to a nutritionist on another episode who we talked a lot about the varied diets and the stress and the overwhelm that comes from trying to figure out how to eat, and again, being individualistic.
Right.
And to calm down and to ask yourself, what's my best choice right now? I ask that all the time to figure out what I should do next.
Yeah, me too. It's a moment by moment.
Yeah. Because we want to inspire women and couples that are in pursuit of a family, what do you think would be some good parting advice for them in the context of all the perceived stressors and challenges right now? You're like a nurturing force, as am I, but I want to hear your wisdom.
It's funny. I had a woman today who came in who's been through the ringer with fertility. I mean, like, she just got diagnosed with endometriosis, but she had been with a doctor for 3 years, and they only had one embryo, but they put it back and it didn't work. And they're doing, I believe, donor egg and maybe surrogacy. And this is like all this transition. And we all don't know how things are going to turn out for anyone. Like, even though it's not like a guaranteed, like, you're going to have a baby, 100% guaranteed. It's really the journey of life, and we're all on it. And there's a lot of ups and downs. And I really think that the biggest thing that we can do is kind of like connect into our heart with love, but then kind of connect into the bigger picture of our journey of like how it's supposed to unfold for us, right? It's not the same for everyone, and some people have, you listen to some people's miscarriage stories and it's like, it's heartbreaking, but I'm always bringing people back to kind of like, there's a bigger picture. It's a journey. We get to be stronger. We get to learn things about ourselves. We get to grow spiritually. And at the end of the day, it's about love and growing spiritually. And sometimes we have to go through difficulty to get there. It's not always the easy road. Yeah. So it's trying to look bigger than what's happening today. And I always try to give a bigger perspective, right? It's like if they do a donor egg and they get a surrogate and they hold a baby, I'm like, like you love your dog.
Yeah.
Like, it's like she's like, yeah, I felt like I gave birth to it. I was like, yes, bigger, you're going to, creating a family doesn't always look like we thought it was going to look. Life doesn't look like we thought it was going to look, but it doesn't mean there can be great love and joy in it. So that's kind of my spiel.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I think for all of us trying to navigate this life, I don't think it's just for the fertility people, right?
Yeah, except that the fertility chapter is really loud and really long and expensive, all-consuming.
Oh, yeah. And, you really, like, I'm always sort of like having to bring people back from like, if you have so much money to spend, it's like just trying to sort of like, what's important for you at the end of the day? What's important for you? Is it like, trying to help people to get to what's important. Some people are on that road. They lost sight of like, they want to have their own baby, but they've, you know what I mean? It's like so consuming that they forget like, oh, wait, okay, what is important to me? Yeah.
Having a good, solid relationship, relationships with family and friends that are nurturing for their spirit, contributing something to the planet and the world and friends and families' lives. Yeah, all of that stuff is really important. And I think it gets lost on us when we're in the moment of, oh, I only got this many number of eggs or embryos, or I only got this or something. I
mean, it's our biological imperative to conceive. It's like what we're made for. For some women, they don't have it. But for those who make it, it's like, it's not intellectual. It's like a burning desire. And when it doesn't happen, it's like, what's wrong, right? It really on a very deep level. And I have to remind people that too, because it's devastating. It's a hard journey for some. Yeah.
For a lot.
Yeah. It's our journey. And yeah, it's very emotional because it's such a biological imperative, right?
Yeah. But it does change us. Whether you get through and you have a kid or not, it changes us. Could harden us, could harden our heart if we get through and it didn't work. Or that's the work that we're trying to do here.
Yeah,
right?
we're trying to
Keep
not
them
harden
soft.
hearts. Like
Yeah.
no hardened hearts here, because it's all like,
Yeah.
and usually the stuff in fertility, I mean, you're a mom too, right? It's like, I'm always reminding my patients and my elderly wisdom of like, God, this stuff you're going through, it's like lemonade from the lemons. Like this is you're going to use this again.
Yeah.
You're going to use these things that you've learned for motherhood or for your life. Like it doesn't end here. Keeps going. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Denise, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
What a great way to give some information about Chinese medicine and hopefully inspire the listeners. I really appreciate you giving your time today and sharing your thoughts and your stories.